It's October 27th, 2022. This is a special edition of Roqe. Well, hi there. Welcome to episode 210 of Roqe, The Uprising. Dear U.S. Special Envoy for Iran, Robert Malley, surely it's time to step aside? I'm Jian Ghomeshi. Hello to you from Toronto. Salam Dustan Aziz. As we all know, this is a new era when Iranians are spectacularly turning the tide. And for all the platitudes of the White House supporting women and men seeking change, we've learned that you either can't read the room or you're really not on side. Robert Malley, it's about time to step aside. I don't know you. You must be a very smart guy with lots of experience as a lawyer, a political scientist, and working with the National Security Council in the United States. And of course, you were the lead negotiator on that 2015 Iran nuclear deal known as the JCPOA. But while Iranians don't need the U.S. to jump in as the imperialist saviors in this moment, nor do the people of Iran need you standing in their way. And we can only really judge where you stand by what you do and what you say. And so it is more than troubling when you issue a statement earlier this week that Iranians are protesting simply because they want respect from the Islamic Republic. Sorry, what? Have you heard the chants? Have you seen the demonstrations? Do you know why young girls and boys are being murdered by regime militia in the streets? This is about revolution, the desire for regime change. Iranians want the Ayatollahs gone, and as the special envoy, we might expect that you would understand that reality in Iran. Nor do the Iranian people need permission from you or your administration to seek fundamental change. Now, we know you showed contrition, but what exactly is your mission? You must be aware of a long-standing notion that the U.S. and other major powers have been quiescent when it comes to the ongoing existence of this murderous regime. Yes, the right things have usually been said publicly, but deals get made, meetings are taken, and in Canada, we still haven't put the IRGC on the terrorist list in full. But even when we know these things happen behind closed doors, like your meetings with Zarif, Western powers are usually better at hiding a desire to enable and maintain the regime in Iran. But you weren't very good at that this week. And so, a petition has been started that has been signed by tens of thousands of people on the worldwide nonprofit website change.org, asking for you and your deputy to be removed from your posts within the Biden administration. And this is not your random cancellation. This is a life and death situation. It's no longer time for nuclear deals. It's no longer time for reformist appeals. The words on the placards say it all. One solution, revolution. And yes, dear Robert Malley, it's likely not only you. There is an agenda that extends far beyond you that may involve the continued insistence on a nuclear deal and ongoing engagement with this Iranian regime. But let's start with your position. Do it as respect for the rebirth of Iranian pride. Go ahead. It's time to step aside. Coming up on this special episode of Roqe, 4 powerful Iranian female voices from different parts of the world, including 2 inside Iran, plus our Roqe Roundtable. This is Roqe, episode 210, The Uprising. 40 days and no going back. Here we are in the Roqe studio with our regular on-air team as we've been doing these Uprising shows for the last 6 weeks now, 40 days and no going back. Pega is here. Hi, Smart Pega.
Hello.
And Shaya. Hello, sir.
Hi, Aziza.
How you guys doing?
Good, not bad.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
All right.
Can't believe it's been 40 days.
Well, I feel really exhausted.
Yeah.
I can't hide it. I mean, I'm tapped out, man.
Emotionally, totally drained.
Physically, everything.
Yeah.
And it's just 24/7.
Mm-hmm.
I've canceled on any friends that I was supposed to hang out with, whatever. It's just been this,
Yeah.
My only social activity has been on the protests.
Demonstrations. Yeah.
Walking on protests
That's where I see friends now.
The new version of going to the club.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's yeah.
But it gives a new meaning to our lives.
Yeah.
It does. Absolutely.
I feel
Absolutely.
good.
There's a reason we're doing this. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I should say that I'm headed out to Istanbul in a few hours. We had long planned to do our series called Talking to Persians and go to Istanbul and do a version there. And then we were equivocating about whether to go because this isn't the time. The original idea behind Talking to Persians is talking to people who are in a diasporic city about why did you end up here? Who is the Persian community in this city? What are they doing? Our mission has changed now in the sense that we're still going to go for a few days, but I really want to go because it's about as close as you can get to Iran right now. And the protests are also happening in Istanbul, and there's a lot going on there that we hope to capture documentary style. This is the last show within the studio for about a week or so, but I'm excited about this one because we have in Los Angeles, Azam Ali coming on the show, the great singer and songwriter. She's just put out a new song, a new version of Baraye with a great group of people and a surprising a group of people. We'll get to that. And Azam has just been very, very outspoken and active from Los Angeles. She's been outspoken on political issues with Iran for years, but she's really doing her part right now. So she will be joining us. Later in the show, Roxana Mohammed Khani, she is an activist and she's got a PhD in chemistry, but she's been so active in London. She's in London, England, and she started this new initiative where she is addressing businesses in London, Iranian businesses in London, asking them to support the movement for change in Iran, and if they don't, making that public. And it's a very, very interesting initiative that has gone viral. So Roxana will be joining us. I'm very happy to have her coming on from London. That's in a little while from now. But before that, we are going to, on Thursdays, we've been doing Voices from Iran. And we are going to Mashad and someone named Azadeh and another woman who's in Tehran who we're going to call Lilac. As her pseudonym, both young women, both who've been on the front lines of the demonstrations. And yesterday was, of course, a pretty epic day in Iran. And yesterday marked, as the title of today's our episode suggests, 40 days. This was 40 days since the killing of Mahsa Jina Amini. Shai, you want to explain why the 40th day anniversary is so important in case there's non-Iranians listening?
Yeah, I mean, in Iranian traditional, after someone has passed away, there is 2 days which is important. One, 7 days after his or her death, and then the 40 days after his or her death.
Yeah.
And so in terms of revolution, what is interesting is that the revolution in 1979 happened after, like, in a domino shape, 40th deaths of the people. So this is important for revolution.
It's sort of a callback. We're seeing that happening again.
Yes.
Did you guys have any? I mean, we had heard, and especially because we're in touch with people who are demonstrating in Iran for these episodes, we had heard that yesterday was going to be a big day of action, but I had no idea it was going to be what it was, especially with the near, I don't know, it looked like 100,000 people or something gathering in the hometown of Mahsa in Kurdistan. Did you have any sense of this?
Yeah, I mean, well, just based on tradition and culture and things like that, and the Chehelom, or the 40th day of passing, I anticipated that it would be like this. And I think actually the security forces anticipated this as well, and the government and the regime, because speaking of Saqez, in anticipation of fresh demonstrations, they had actually deployed hundreds of Basiji forces and things like that all across the varying cities in Iran, especially in Saqqez, to the point that, thousands of mourners showed up and they were walking along not only the road, but through fields, across a river to bypass, and also just making their way to the cemetery in any way, shape, or form that they could. And regardless of these forces, they still made their way through.
Right, but even two steps further back from that, the demonstration itself, the march itself, was an act of defiance because didn't the regime say something like even to Mashad's family cannot gather to mark this date? Well, there was some dictate that...
We still don't know if Mashad's family was actually there or not. There hasn't been any confirmation that her family was there.
Right. The point being, the regime doesn't take, even if it's a solemn occasion, the regime doesn't necessarily respect that and was continuing its dictate that people shouldn't gather in the streets. Now this happened all over Iran. We were seeing interesting a lot this week. A lot more video is coming out of Iran. We're back to seeing what's going on in the streets to a certain extent. So it looked like it was just everywhere.
Yes, everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, Tehran, Shiraz, Mashad, Mahabad, and so many other cities. But actually, a couple of things. I was doing some reading and found a couple of stats from a few of the cities. So, for example, in Tehran, that's where some of the biggest demonstrations were. And this is the highest report of clashes between students and the police in downtown Tehran to date. So that was one of the big occurrences that happened yesterday. We saw a lot of videos coming out yesterday, like you mentioned. So there was that video of the Grand Bazaar in Tehran that was quite significant. In Shiraz, there was reports that there was demonstrations led by high school students more than anybody else. So they were a little bit more scattered in Shiraz, but I thought that it was really interesting that, what we've been talking about in terms of the youth in Iran and Shiraz here are these high school students, and they're the ones that are leading these demonstrations on this significant day. Then we have in Mashad, there was actually reports that classes had been canceled in local schools ahead of all of these demonstrations.
Well, I should say we've heard in advance from Azadeh, the person we're speaking to at Mashad. Mashad has not been, it's been one of the places where there's been a real clampdown, and because of the nature of the city, it's not been the hotbed of demonstrations the way, say, Tehran has been, or Kurdistan or something. But that, in fact, it was quite big in Mashad yesterday as well. We'll talk to Azadeh, who's there and who was part of it. But these are real telltale signs. I mean, I saw Tabriz, Rasht, all kinds of places that not only are people not backing down, but it's growing. I mean, again, I know we've said this a few times. I mean, and maybe when we turned that corner 4 weeks ago from it's not a protest, it's a revolution, it became self-evident. But it really isn't like any other time. When the regime act of force, the iron fist, the clampdown would snuff out the will of the people. In this case, it just, the people are not giving up.
They're not, and you can see it in the way that the Basiji force or the police force or the military or whoever is responding as well. So, for example, in Mashad, I read that quite early on during the day, what the Basiji were doing is that they were riding around on their motorcycles on the sidewalks and trying to disperse any sort of group or crowd or anything like that, even if it was in front of a store and had nothing to do with the happenings of demonstrating and chanting or anything like that. So you can see that they're fearful of people gathering in any way because it's been so instrumental.
I wonder, did you see that I mean, there's disturbing videos, and then there's videos where that expose the Basij as such lunatics. Did you see the video of the cop or the Basij member or whatever just hitting a bunch of motorcycles and wanting to just destroy anything to do with anybody who wants to fight for democratic change? I mean, it's I don't want to say it's comical because the whole situation is so horrific, but it's those kind of videos are such an exposition of how bankrupt this regime is in every way, including tactically and morally, and what an embarrassment to see this stuff. Shaya, what were you feeling as you saw those those. I have to admit, I know this is becoming a daily occurrence because we said this happened when we looked at Berlin too. But seeing the pictures from Saqez, I got emotional.
Oh yeah.
I've never been there, but I mean, it felt power with the people, man.
Yes, and for me, the thing what was like kind of fascinating was that usually we see the demonstration in the city, like with the buildings, but this was
and in the dark.
Yeah. But this was like in the kind of a middle of a road in the like mountain and desert, and it was like a scene of a movie, an epic movie, like Game of Thrones.
Yeah, it really was.
Yeah,
it really was.
And the other thing actually happened yesterday was there was some the regime called it terrorist attacking some mosque in Shiraz, Shah Cheragh, which was really interesting. The reaction, people they are saying that this time we don't buy your acts, or because
that's an old trick, huh?
That's an old trick,
To say what? To say
to kill the people and say, oh, because
the protesters did this.
Yes.
And I mean, they seem to have found out who it was so quickly.
Yeah.
It was like, that's the part that boggles my mind is, one, no one's going to believe it anyway. But, sometimes I can't believe the stupidity of the regime. I mean, to go ahead and commit something like that, an act of quote unquote terrorism, which they've done themselves, and then to come out within hours and say, oh, we know who it is. Well,
yeah. And at the same time, we keep seeing more and more reports of little kids who've been killed, and I mean, again, too many to say all their names. Even at this point, it would start to take a bunch of the show to do it, and it is every time a reminder that this is real stuff and life and death.
It is.
This is why statements by Robert Malley, reflective of the regime, the Biden administration. I mean, some people would call it a regime, reflective of the White House, or not, or as he said, I mistook my words. I said I misspoke or something. Are so difficult to hear in this moment because it's a daily occurrence. We know that the deaths, even when I see those death counts that are 250 people have died now or something, the official ones, the Amnesty International kind of one, I'm so sure that it's higher than that, right? We all are. We know that. We know that they can't possibly count what's happening in all kinds of places in Iran, and so it's frightful. It's frightful, the situation. We have a situation I mentioned on Monday that I want to talk about again here, and I'm going to talk about it with one of our guests because she says that it's happening to her as well. This is this thing that's happening to some of us in the diaspora who are speaking out about Iran, especially if there's any platform of any prominence. And I dare say it's happened to me and Roqe Media. This is something called internet shadow banning. Now, there's some cases where it's overtly done, where there's accounts that have been disabled or they're unable to post or anything. And then other ones, like us, there's something called shadow banning going on. If you are listening to us right now, and particularly if you're probably listening to us on a platform that isn't Instagram, but if you're listening to us on our social media platforms, it means that somehow this has gotten to you, this has gotten through to you, and because it isn't getting to all of our audience. Shadow banning is the practice of blocking or partially blocking a user or the user's content from some areas of an online community in such a way that the ban is not readily apparent to the user. So we don't know, like we didn't know earlier this week why all of a sudden there's a drop in our views and not just in our view count, but we can see that less people are able to view our stories, are able to view things that are shared, our content that is shared. Then of course we started talking to other people and hearing that this is happening to a lot of folks who are posting about Iran, and it is a very on Monday I used the word dystopian. It's a very scary thing that's happening, which is that Iran's crackdown, the IRI crackdown, that is not just happening within the borders of Iran. That's where it's happening brutally. That's where it's happening most importantly, and that's where it's happening in a bloody way. But we've heard about agents of the, it was 2 years ago that Abbas Milani was on the show saying there's thousands of agents of the IRGC in the Western world, trolling around looking for ways to disrupt. This is some of the way that we see that's happening. We can't say this empirically. We can't say we don't have the official word and evidence on this, but it is way too conspicuous. It's way too widespread. It's way too obvious that something is going on.
Yeah, and I found out something else about shadow banning, and it's that your current followers are the only ones who will see your hashtag post if you're using one of these quote-unquote banned hashtags. So if we're going with the theory that, hashtag Masa Amini or hashtag Iran Revolution is banned, then if you're hashtagging that on your posts, only the people that follow you will see that. If the people who follow you now repost what you've posted with those hashtags, the same thing will apply to them. So only their followers will see it. So despite your profile being a public profile, it never reaches anyone who's not a follower. And that's the problem, is that's where we see the decrease in views and the decrease in activity.
And as Keon mentioned on Monday, you can see it in personal platforms where you if you put up 5 stories, 4 are about Iran and the one in the middle is not about Iran, that one suddenly has a gazillion more views than the other ones. In other words, people are able to see that. It makes no sense if you put them up chronologically why one is being seen and the other is not. So something is afoot, and I don't bring this up, or one doesn't want to bring this up to sort of cry about our views not being as much as we want them to be or something. It's the retarding of it's the undermining of the movement of information that is important information. It's the undermining of the ability to keep the enthusiasm and the movement in the diaspora flowing, and for people to be sharing ways to organize and to help and support and all of that, right? It's disabling. Now, again, on most of our platforms we're okay. This is something that is, I guess, harder to attack on, an Apple podcast platform or something. But in social media, it's happened.
Seems to be meta.
And when you put it next to like Robert Malley's statement, you everything. Because again, maybe this is not necessarily from Iranian regime, but maybe there are some people in Western world that they are.
We don't know. We don't know. And I am the last person to want to buy into conspiracy theories, but it gets to a point where things are way too conspicuous. Why would it be that all of a sudden all kinds of people in the United States and Canada and other Western places are having trouble posting stuff about Iran? And in a moment when we're posting things that are particularly and pointedly anti-regime, it's so, if you happen to be listening to this and you work for Meta, and if you have a job that specifically can help explain this or help us out, by all means get in touch. This weekend, there's going to be another set of demonstrations. We wanted to actually give a shout out to this. There's things happening all the time, really great petitions, really great protests, really great that we can't support. We can't mention them all, but we should mention this weekend. There's a human chain idea. You want to explain?
That's right. Yeah. So it's being organized by the Association of Families of Flight PS 752. And the idea is that we're going to be creating a human chain. In Toronto, specifically, the human chain will stretch from Yonge and Steeles and go south on Yonge all the way to Harbourfront, which is Yonge and Queens Quay. That's roughly about 30 kilometers across Yonge Street. If you're in Toronto, that's where it's going to be. It's going to take place in 40 cities worldwide so far, and cities are continuously being added. You can have a look on the website, add your city if you organize it there. And the idea is, again, more awareness, right? And this way, through the manner of creating a human chain.
It's great. It's a great idea. Hopefully you'll be here in Toronto at that.
I will be here and at the human
hopefully
chain.
There's a human chain in Istanbul that I can be part of. I should also just mention before we get to our first guest, there's a couple of initiatives that I think are really inspired. Some people have been collecting money and putting up big billboards So there's the one at Times Square that got a lot of attention in the last 24 hours, and in New York, and there's been billboards here in Toronto, in Los Angeles, etc. There's that big mural of Massa Amini in Los Angeles that is quite fabulous. There's a group in Toronto who did something that I think is really cool too. I can't remember. I think they're called Freedom for Iran or Freedom for United Iran, something like that. The initiative is to print up a whole bunch of signs and put them up everywhere, like campaign signs, like you know. And it was funny because there was a municipal election going on last week in Toronto, and so there were these signs of people who were running for mayor, and then there was a sign with Massa Amini. You know, it was actually really cool. You know, and this group did a really great job. I know they've got a couple of hundred volunteers who are part of this, who are putting these signs up everywhere, and it's a way of saying wherever you are in the world, bring awareness by putting things in people's faces, whether it's it's stickers or buttons or the Roxana, who we're going to speak to, who's got this idea of putting these flyers in the Iranian businesses, and it's telling when they say, no, I don't want to put that flyer here. Well, why not? What's your agenda? But the idea of putting these signs everywhere is a really inspired one. They only last a few days because people take them down, city officials, or I don't know, people steal them, whatever happens to them. But very cool idea, I thought.
I've noticed something similar to that. I was on Yonge Street a couple of days ago, and there was actually a Korean restaurant that I saw this happen in, and they had just put a flag behind their window. And just walking by, that was so heartwarming.
An Iranian
to see.
flag?
An Iranian flag, yeah. Well,
which Iranian flag?
It was just the colors, and then it said Iran in the middle. So I guess unofficially the Iranian flag. But it was so heartwarming.
It wasn't a Korean restaurant supporting Jomiya.
No, but it was just so heartwarming to see that non-Iranian communities also stepping up and doing their part in terms of raising this awareness in any way they can. So.
Yeah, that's been great. All right. Thank you guys. Thanks for our regular roundtable. Let's go to our featured guests. I'm stoked that we have these people coming up on this show today. And let's go first to Los Angeles. First up, an Iranian singer and music producer who's the lead vocalist for the band Niyaz. So she was born and raised in Tehran, but has been living and working in the diaspora, Canada and the United States for many years. She's been very active in the protests and movement for freedom in Iran in recent weeks, and she's just released a new version of that Shervin revolutionary anthem Baraye, along with her partner Loga Ramin Turkian, and with the likes of Mamak Khadem and Hamed Nikpay and others. And Azam Ali is the guest, and she joins me from Los Angeles. Azam Ali, are you there? Hello.
Hi, Jian. It's so nice to be with you. Thank you for all that you're doing these days, just covering the story and amplifying the voices of Iranians inside Iran.
You're very kind. Thank you for saying that. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. You know that I feel that way. Listen, I want to talk about your new song that you guys just released, but I thought we'd take a step back. It's the first time you've been back on the program since this new era, post the killing of Massa Amini and everything that's happened after that. Tell me on a broad level first how you've been processing the last 6 weeks.
I think I'm processing it the same way every other Iranian is, living in the diaspora. It's a sort of admixture of fear, excitement, and I want to also say survivor's guilt, because there is a sense of paralysis that we want to help, and we know what is at stake, and we know that people are very young people are going out on the street with their lives in their hands, and we are in many ways not able to really do much. We are watching it all unfold from the comforts of our lives and in the safety of our lives. So it's a very difficult, in some ways, I think, post-traumatic state.
I get the survivor's guilt, and I get the excitement part in terms of the inspiration of these young people who are in the streets and are changing Iran and potentially changing the world. Tell me about the fear part. The first thing you said, fear. Why fear?
Because you know that by the time this is all over, there's going to be a lot of more beautiful young people who will have lost their lives. And each one that we lose is, it's a family that's ruined forever. And you just wonder how many more before this is over. So there is a sense of fear and doom about the whole thing, because it's just, I don't see it ending anytime very soon.
You're in Los Angeles. You've been active there, as I said, in the protests and stuff. I mean, sometimes that the Iranian community in Los Angeles, as big as it is, can sometimes be seen as quite staid or benign in terms of getting involved in activism like this. That's not been the case this time. There's big demonstrations in Los Angeles. There's a lot of organizing going on. Tell me, if you will, from your perspective, what the vibe has been like, and maybe what has surprised you about what you've seen in the diaspora from the west coast of the United States there.
Well, I cannot talk about demonstrations without saying that Toronto put all of us to shame. You guys, really, the numbers there. I mean, 50,000 is not a joke.
Pre-Berlin, it was the biggest, but Berlin has now.
Yes, but I'm not considering Berlin, because that's, people went from multiple countries.
Sure.
We're talking about a single city. And for me personally, I'm a bit disappointed in the numbers that are showing up in Los Angeles, because we have 500,000 Iranians here, if not more. We should surpass Berlin. There's no reason why there shouldn't be at least 150,000 Iranians protesting. But it's getting better. I think one of the problems is also just the layout of the city. It's so inconvenient to drive from one place to another, and the large protest is taking place in downtown LA, which is not very accessible for a lot of people. But I think for all of us who are attending the protests, it's a place to just go and feel like you are doing something, because there's only so much that you can do with posting and talking about it with your friends or talking about it with neighbors. There's only so much you can do, and there's this sense of unity and solidarity that you feel when you go to the protests, and you know that you are feeling the same thing that every other person there is feeling. And I think we just have to keep it up. We just have to keep going, keep protesting, and if for nothing else, really to show those inside of Iran that we are with them and they're not forgotten. They're not fighting alone.
Well, you referenced these episodes we've been doing with the Voices Inside Iran, with the young people who are on the front lines in Iran, and consistently they have told us week after week that it does make a difference to them when they see the numbers outside of Iran of people supporting them. It does make a difference to them when they see the kind of high-profile people speaking in favor of what they're doing. It does make a difference for them when they hear the chants and see the excitement and the inspiration from across the world. So that's, if nothing else, a reason for us to keep doing this. And I don't want to get too in the weeds about the Diaspora Olympics, of which city is doing more than another city. But I will say, as a sidebar, it's funny you referenced that 50,000 plus demonstration we had in Toronto. When we were on that demonstration, it was happening. There was one simultaneously happening in Los Angeles, and I was with Babak Amini. We were walking in Toronto amongst these 50,000 people, and he was talking to someone, a pretty high profile person, I guess, who was in the march in Los Angeles, who was saying exactly what you said, that they were a little disappointed that the numbers that should be represented in a city that has that big a diaspora community have not been out there. That this is to take nothing away from all of the active people in Los Angeles who've been doing great stuff. But if you were to take a guess, or if you were to look at the DNA of what's going on there, why do you think that is the case, that it hasn't been as active as some of the other cities like Vancouver or Toronto or even San Francisco up the street?
I think I can say that one of the areas where I feel we are failing is advertising the demonstration. I think a lot of people just don't even hear about them. I mean, I heard about it just from close friends in the community who are extremely active like I am. But I have not seen anything across my social media, or I don't get, I mean, I just don't really see it anywhere. I think there needs to be proper advertising in the magazines that, let's say, the older generation reads that perhaps the young generation doesn't read, and just a little bit more effort in terms of the visibility of the demonstrations. We just need to know when it's happening, exactly how it's happening, and it's just we're not seeing that as much as I would like on social media platforms.
All right. The last 24 hours have been pretty epic in Iran. Both amazing in terms of the masses, the people back out on the streets everywhere, marking the 40th anniversary of the murder of Mashad. But also, again, I feel like I overuse the word, but devastating in terms of the way we've seen people shot at, detained, killed, etc. In terms of the sustainability of this movement that hasn't gone away, that has transformed itself from a protest into a revolution by the means of just not evaporating, despite the crackdowns and the harsh actions that we expect and see again from this regime, maybe more brutally than before. Tell me, as someone who, a lot of these issues, whether it's patriarchy or near genocide in Iran, or all of the things that are imbued in 43 years of frustration are not new to you. These are things that you've talked about for years. Tell me how you feel about these massive demonstrations continuing, that the energy of Iranians across Iran yesterday, over the last 24 hours, has, if anything, grown in terms of the power of this movement.
I think that, this would also, my response would include another question you asked earlier, which I didn't answer, is what has surprised me in this movement. I think what I think is just shocking and amazing for all of us to see is that there is a generation of Iranians that we had no idea what they are about. It's I think we go about our lives as Iranians in diaspora, and we just assume that those inside Iran are very similar to us in many ways. Okay, with different, sort of life circumstances, but suddenly you're seeing that there's this entire generation who are their own people, and what does that mean in terms of the bigger movement as we are dismantling old power structures? And so it's a new Iran has to rise from this, and it's going to be their Iran, their version of Iran. It's not going to be what we always dreamed, or our parents' generation dreamed, one day the revolution will end and we'll go back to the way it was and the way Iran used to be, this sort of nostalgic architecture that we have all sort of been sustaining in our minds of an Iran that was. And I think what is very beautiful for me that I'm realizing is that nostalgic Iran is always going to be a part of who I am and my internal landscape. But the Iran that is going to emerge is the Iran that these young people are going to build. And it's going to be a very different Iran. And I, as someone who is not familiar with their lived experience of what it's like to be there and to have been born and raised under such a tyrannical regime, I have no idea what it is they are going to design for themselves, but it is theirs to design, and it is our place to support them in every way we can, to not build the Iran we envision, but to help them build the Iran that they want to live in.
It's such a profound point, and may I express my surprise that you've come up with a profound point, but it's always a shock. No, it's It's such a profound point, because there's a lot of lip service. I like to think it's not lip service. I'm the one amongst many saying it, that we owe this to the young people of Iran. They are the de facto leaders, despite some of the people who are doing great organizing outside of Iran, etc. These guys are leading it, but that the next step has to be true too, which is that if they're responsible for building the new house, then we in the diaspora and older generations, no matter how long they've been in Los Angeles or DC or Toronto or wherever, are not going to be the ones having the say of the interior design of the house. It's going to be the young people that have to do that. It's the same people who are leading things in Iran. It's a very profound point, and I think it's going to be an important lesson for the diaspora to learn. I hope that it's going to be possible.
Yeah, that part I'm not really sure about, because I'm like everybody else. I'm obsessed with everything now. I watch and listen to all the different analysis that is floating around of what should be done, what should not be done, and where it's going to go, where it's not going to go. And this is one thing that I don't hear anybody talking about, because the reality is that most of us have lived our lives now in our own respective countries, cities, wherever it is that we are spread across the world. None of us are going to leave our lives, and some of us who have children who've been born in other countries and they have their lives, we're not going to uproot them and take them back to Iran. So it's really not our place to design a nation for these people. We may have a connection to it, but it's not our place anymore to design it for them.
Well, a lot of people are going to go back or want to. The part of the reason why a lot of these conversations don't happen is because it sounds almost irresponsibly premature, right? As you said earlier, there's a lot of bloodshed. There's a lot of torturous days ahead of us before we can even dream about the actual eradication of this regime. And there's so many ways that things could go sideways that can be pretty terrifying. Back to your point about fear, but yes. It feels like a conversation we also need to start having, that self-determination for the people inside Iran. Even if some of us want to return and enjoy a coffee there without having to wear a hijab or be told what kind of music we have to play or lyrics, it still is going to need to be self-determination for Iran, is what you're saying, right?
Absolutely. And I think, if anything, one of my bigger hopes, which comes back to sort of my work that I've been doing alongside my artistic life, which falls somewhere in the intersection between art and education. And that is, when we've talked, not to completely segue into a different conversation, but if we're talking about the decolonization of arts and sort of going back to Iran prior to it becoming a nation state, and before it was colonized, and how we were really an empire under which we had so many different ethnic groups and religious groups who thrived and all lived together. And that's what made Iran the beautiful mosaic that it is. And I just feel like we lost a lot of that when we all sort of got lumped under one umbrella as the singular identity of what is Iran. And I look at what's happening now, and I think this generation is going to do exactly that. I mean, one of the things that I wish was being talked about more, which I don't think majority of Iranians are ready to talk about, is the fact that, still I very, very rarely see the fact that Mahsa Jina Amini, that there is any reference to her being Kurdish, that, that actually what Kurdish people have endured under the Iranian regime, that the whole movement of Zan Zendegi Azadi is a Kurdish movement. These are all, I want to have that bigger conversation later on.
Not to mention, Azam John, the places that are bearing the brunt of the crackdown are places like Sanandaj in Kurdistan,
Exactly.
or Zahedan in Sistan Balochistan, or the ethnic outlying areas, not the big cities where the regime presumably has to be a little more careful in terms of the way it cracks down in Tehran or Shiraz, right?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, those are things that I hope we talk about more and more, because, here is this Kurdish woman who has she became the sacrificial flower for this whole, I mean, I just feel like they are setting fire to a nation that was not serving its people anymore. And from these ashes, they are going to build their own nation. And she was the match. She was the spark that lit this fire.
Yeah.
And we have to recognize that she was a Kurdish woman, We have to recognize this. So I have a greater hope that not only will there be a better Iran to come out of this, but it will be a Iran that will be a much more unified Iran in terms of its ethnic and religious groups. I really believe that this generation is going to deliver that.
This may sound antiquated already to even question this, but the way you're talking sounds quite hopeful. You do believe this is the revolution without putting a timeline on it?
I think this is it. It may. It all depends on, I think it's going to be very hard to achieve it without some sort of external hand coming sort of and helping the people. I mean, we all know that if the Western forces wanted to meddle in and help move things along, that they could, but it's not in the interest of the West to do that. And also with the war in Ukraine, they kind of have their hands full. But
or they'd be meddling in a way that we don't want. So it's a tough line to walk too.
So it's a tough one, but I think that if we continue from the outside to support them, and they have it in them, you also, the spirit, everything is finite, unfortunately. How much fight they have left in them is really only they know that. How many more days can they take to the streets? How many more daughters and sons can they sacrifice? So we just have to sort of wait and see. But my feeling is that this could be it, and if it is not it, definitely in the next 5 to 10 years, this is going to happen again and again, because a brutal regime like this one that we're seeing, they're not going to stop oppressing people and killing people for no reason. This is in the DNA of this regime. It's a rule by violence and oppression regime.
It's interesting when people say, well, how do you want the world to help and intervene then? And when you say you don't want imperialism, you don't want America to go in and take over. And it's kind of like, well, we have a pretty good example from this year, Ukraine. It's just, the case study's there. There's an example of where the world has correctly, and quite admirably stepped up for a country where, it seemed like there were atrocities being taken place, and people came to their aid socially, economically, politically, culturally. And that continues. I don't see why it's rocket science to be able to do that for Iran. Sadly, it doesn't seem like the same thing is going to happen for Iran, but certainly the world is waking up in a way it hasn't before, right?
Well, I think also, what you mentioned is something that I read a lot on my own, because, that's all I post about now since all this started. And I read, I have a close relationship with my fan base. So I read a lot of the comments, and many of them refer to exactly that. Well, how do you want us to intervene? On one hand, you tell us don't intervene. And I think, unfortunately, there is an empathy deficit when it comes to Iran, particularly in the American and this American mind. And that is, it is so deeply rooted in the subconscious of the American psyche. I think since the hostage crisis, there is a sense of it's hard to generate empathy for the Middle East in general, but Iran specifically. And I'm not afraid to say that it's easier for them to empathize with a nation where white Europeans are being killed. It's somehow that is much more of a trigger. It's probably something within our own survival mechanism, internal survival mechanism. You know, you feel like you are being attacked the same way you and I right now feel that we are being attacked with what is happening in Iran. I assume if I were a white European or American, I would feel that way about what's happening in Ukraine. So I think the first step is sort of also just generating any kind of empathy in people, because they don't ask those kind of questions about Ukraine. Why are we giving billions of dollars to help them with their, with fighting? Why? Nobody questions that.
Although the empathy does not always have to be direct, doesn't have to play directly into identity politics. Your buddy Armin Amari was on this program a few weeks ago saying, look, we were there for Black Lives Matter, we were there for Ukraine, we were there for now it's our turn, isn't it, for everybody to come and support us. We don't, I always say you don't have to be South African to oppose apartheid, right? So it's something that we'd like to see the world step up to be there for. And I should say, I did an essay earlier this week on the rebirth of Iranian pride, and one of the points I was making in there was for people like you and I who've been grown up mostly in the diaspora in the last few decades, we're so used to being the Hollywood villains. We're so used to the stereotypes and generalizations. We're so used to looking over our shoulder or whispering that we're Iranian, that to see big name celebrities or pundits, etc., now supporting Iranians is almost kind of a shock to the system. It's like, whoa, this is new. This is something different. This is kind of inspiring. So it is happening on some level. It's just not anywhere near the kind of level that we saw perhaps in the spring with Ukraine.
Yes, I think if I can just interject that,
yeah.
I think part of it is that when we're talking about Black Lives Matter or the LGBTQ community or anything like that, I think because we interact, I think majority of Americans or Westerners, Europeans, they interact with Black people or LGBTQ people every day, and it's kind of somehow it feels kind of closer to home. But I don't think people think too much about the fact that so many Iranians live in their community, and there is this sort of general narrative that is embedded in the mindset of the Western world that it's the Middle East. There's always been something tumultuous unfolding there. There's always infighting. There's always religious wars, and I think a big part of being successful in what we are trying to achieve outside of Iran is our success is entirely going to be dependent on partially educating people about the reality of Iran, because even people who I know, who are intelligent people, who are worldly people and well-traveled, well-read people, even some of them don't quite understand how that Iran was actually, that the Islamic Republic wasn't always there. It was an imported idea. It was an imported ideology. And, it's sort of, you have to begin from there. Right. And then they begin to understand, and, oh, wow, so they have been oppressed. They have suffered for so many years. And then it kind of just comes from there. So a big part of our success is going to be dependent upon the right narrative, that all of us who have any sort of influence, that we make sure that this keeps being repeated and repeated and repeating. Because just posting, one of the things I decided early on, I'm not going to keep sharing videos of the protests because it doesn't mean anything to anyone. All it does is reinforce in the minds of people who don't know anything about Iran, oh, it's a violent area of the world. It's the Middle East. They're savages. They always fight. There's always something. So instead of that, you have to first, introduce the right narrative and then contextualize what is happening. Without the context, it just doesn't make sense to people.
I got you. I mean, let me also issue a small corrective too, which is to say, it's not like important social movements, whether it's LGBTQ plus or civil rights movements, etc., are exclusive of what's happening in Iran. I mean, that's part of the battle for freedom includes gay rights or includes ethnic and civil rights, etc. So it is all part of a piece. But Armin's point, and the one that we're making about wanting people to empathize, as you say, I think that's a great word, is understandable, given that we haven't felt that kind of global empathy, certainly in the last 43 years. Tell me about the decision to do another version of Baraye with this group of talented people, including yourself, that you've coalesced together.
Well, it came about because, Arash Avin, one of the singers in the video, he's a very close friend of mine, and he's a well-known singer, and we were just talking about how we were getting hundreds of messages from fans just requesting, please sing this song, please sing this song. And I was just observing what was happening in terms of, okay, there were people going to be covering this song, and every time I thought about doing a version of it, I couldn't help but feel that no matter how I was going to attempt to do it, it would be self-serving in some way. If I was going to do a solo performance of it, it was kind of like riding on the coattails of this artist who had this
I want to hear how you worked yourself through that, because that there has been a little element to that. Not to take anything away from all the artists that have done it, but I've been kind of going, well, Shervin's was iconic. What's the philosophy behind doing these new versions? But so tell me how you worked through that.
And I struggled with it. I'm not going to name names or anything, but I was kind of disappointed. I don't think I've seen any that which I felt were classy and did justice to what Shervin had done. It was every time I thought, okay, well, I'm Azam, I'll do it in an elegant way. I'll do it. But every time I sat to do it, I thought, no, this is going to. There's no way to be able to capture the soul of what he tapped into at that moment. When it was a, for lack of a better word, it was just a moment that could have only happened in the stars. I mean, it's one of those, you're an artist yourself, you're a great musician yourself, so you know that when those moments happen, they are so rare, and when it happens, it's an event that takes place in the heavens.
And every element of it, the vulnerability of his voice, even the shitty production, like it's not produced, like everything makes it an anthem. Everything makes it the right anthem.
And also the fact that if you're a songwriter, you think there's almost an unfinished quality about it. That at the end, it's unfinished. When he goes to that end section, and even that for me was iconic, because it showed that this has no end. There's no way to end a song like this. So then I was sitting there just thinking about, okay, the fans want it because they need that healing right now. They want to unite, because that's what art does. It serves a purpose in social and political movements. it unites the voices. So
your fans were saying, do Baraye?
They were asking me, and then I was talking with Arash, we were just hanging out one night, and he was saying so many people have been asking him. So then I had this just moment of, what would really be beautiful is, instead of me going and doing a version like any other artist who's now going to try to use this moment to get millions of viewers or why don't we come together as a collective of artists who nobody would think that we are going to ever work together or do something together. And why don't we make a unity statement? I wanted it to be a statement of unity. And also, when Ramin and I, sat and we talked about how to produce it, our only goal was, we need to preserve the integrity of what he created 100%. Like we cannot add a sentence, we cannot add a melody, we cannot add our own words, we cannot change it. because it's a perfect song, you know. So how do we preserve the soul of what he created, but actually bring our statement of unity as artists from the outside?
Now, I think I have a sense of this, but explain how this cocktail of particular musicians represents a statement of unity.
Well, okay, so Mamak and Ramin were in a band for many years. Actually, they were in the most successful band, Axiom of Choice, which Ramin had started. And it was basically with Axiom of Choice, they introduced a new genre of Iranian music into the world. I mean, they really changed the landscape of Iranian music. So they were an iconic band. And then they, of course, split up. And then we started Niyaz. Mamak went on to have her solo career. Hamed Nikbeh has a successful career on his own. So when I started making the list, I told myself, I want to make the list of people who even I myself would never have approached them to do something together. You know, this was very important for me. It was about stripping myself of my own sense of pride or it was something that was happening first within myself. You know, I said, okay, who would be very difficult for me to reach out to and say, let's get together to do this. Difficult in the sense that if they said no, or you just don't know how people are going to react in these moments. So I made a very short list to start with, and then people started hearing that I'm doing this. So I started getting a lot of calls from singers and musicians. I want to be on it. And then I decided, you know what? I want to start with this core. And it's a very short song. So we didn't want to redo it. So I said, let's just record us. And then if there is space, we'll bring in others. And then Ramin did this like heartbreaking string orchestration for it. And by the time we all recorded, something really magical happened. And I shot the video. So everybody recorded on their own, but I needed for all of us to come together at one point. So there would be this unified energy behind it. So I said, okay, you're all coming to my house and we're going to shoot at my house. So we set up, I brought food, and, we just hung out, and I shot everyone that day. And it was such an emotional day I don't think any of us had ever been in the same room together, and we ate together. We drank together. It was so emotional. We all embraced, and it's exactly what I wanted to happen.
Wow.
Happened. And that is that we became this united front. And honestly, now that this is out there, I feel like if I didn't do anything else as an artist during this movement, I have made the ultimate contribution and statement. First to Shervin, to honor what he did, because honestly, his song deserved a high quality production without tampering with perfection, because his song is perfect as is.
It's perfect.
And Ramin and I said, we're going to keep the soul of what he did. So we achieved that. Second of all, these, you should hear, I wish I could just make public the texts and the voice messages that we all have been sharing, all the singers on this. It's just so emotional how we all just thanking each other, the love, the tears, the sort of, and it's very powerful. It's very powerful.
Did Hamed Nikbeh text anything crazy? Can you make that public? So
he has to. No, his
voice is so amazing in this.
He's such an emotional person, know. But the thing also is that Arash is different. Arash is just such a soft-spoken and gentle soul. But Hamed and I are two blazing fires, and you cannot put two raging fires next to each other and not expect some sort of combustion. So it's been very nice. Actually, we've kind of bonded over this whole experience. And honestly, I had not talked to Hamed. I want to say in 15, 20 years, maybe. Zero contact, nothing. So it's been really,
wow.
Since we did the song and the video, I think we've had we've come together 3-4 times just to eat and just hang out and listen to music. And
well, listen, we're gonna play the song at the end of the episode in the hopes that even more people will hear it. But before I let you go, I have to talk about the fact that I make the point about before people, hoping that people will hear it, because I understand that something has happened just in the last few days since you posted the song that has been happening to us. And I don't like to lead with this. We talked about it a little bit in our roundtable earlier. But I don't like to lead with it because I don't want it to seem self-serving. But we are here at Roqe Media have been experiencing something that is being called shadow banning, which is a suppression of our content, not on all of our platforms, but on Instagram, Facebook, on Meta, on Instagram in particular, where suddenly people are having trouble seeing it, or are not getting, when it's shared, they don't see that. The posts don't come up. The views, therefore, have been completely different from what they were a couple of weeks ago or last week even. And I understand this has happened now, and we've talked about the fact that there are a number of folks around the world talking about this, especially those in North America who have platforms of some significance. And if they're talking about Iran or dealing with Iran or are Iranian, they are suddenly seeing their content suppressed. And it's the only conclusion is that it's something nefarious. So this is an experience you guys have been having with this video, right?
Yes, actually, Arash Avin's account, he's locked out of his account now, because what they do, it's a cyber attack strategy that they employ, in which they'll have hundreds of people simultaneously report an account. And it's just the way the algorithm is. If enough people report an account for, it can be anything, for violent content, for anything, immediately you get locked out of that account. And by the time a human being gets around to doing the sort of investigation to see what it is, and then realizing that it's a hoax, and then freeing up the account, an account a person has been silenced for at least a few days. It's going to be a few days.
Yeah.
So it happened to Arash's account today. So we all started texting each other, change your passwords, and make it really complicated, so that they cannot hack into your accounts. I mean, it's just this is the only strategy now they can employ, is to try and suppress our voices outside.
Yeah.
And it's also happening. It's happening on our social media. It's happening for those of us who are performers and wanting to go on stage. There are various tactics they are employing to silence us from even going on stage and talking about what's happening in Iran. I'm not really sure if there is a way to sort of fight back on that. I think it's so much of it is just out of our hands. You can only change your password so many times, and in terms of it is though very disheartening to see that Meta has not been more.
I was going to say Meta you figure could do something. It's not happening on other platforms. Certainly with Roqe Media or SoundCloud, Apple, Spotify, everything's chugging along. But the other thing is it is incredibly dark. Just to think about what we're actually talking about here. We're talking about a regime that hasn't just terrorized its own people or sponsored some terror in other places, but now is involved in a global effort in whatever ham-fisted way, and for however long this will last, to suppress people talking about supporting the people who in the country, right, in Iran. I mean, it's really. As I said the other day, dystopian. It's very, very dark stuff. So it's and I'm not sure if it's a good thing to draw attention to it, or what the prescription is. I mean, if anybody's listening and they have a connection to Meta and can start asking some questions, or deal with these accounts, I would.
I mean, I'm employed I work for Meta. I produce music for them, but it's a completely different department. So I have no one I can contact to see.
Wait, what do you work for Meta?
Yeah. For the past 3 years, we've been under contract with them. We produce music for their sound collection. So far, we've produced over 100 songs. So it's basically because they have publishing issues
That's
with
right. That's right.
for video content, music. So we've done, it's the best job I've ever had. They're wonderful people. I mean, the music department there is amazing.
I don't want to say it's like being with the regime, but
No,
but I wouldn't. I'm not sure.
It's such a beast, I mean,
I know, and I'm sure there's a lot of incredibly amazing people who work at it.
It's incredible. I mean, like the music department there. It's just my bosses are they are just the most incredible people. And as an artist, I can tell you, I've never worked anywhere where I was so respected and treated so well.
So wait a minute, you can't talk to your bosses to about this?
No, because it's a completely different department. It's a completely different department. It's a city.
Well, don't they have the extension to the other department? Or?
No, I'll ask for you.
Yeah,
Jian.
please. Well, we're looking for anything we can to try and figure
honestly,
this out.
I will
Right.
do that, but I just know from things in the past where I've tried to sort of ask people I know working inside Meta if they can connect to other departments
For sure.
completely unrelated to music things.
Yeah.
It's been it's very challenging.
Yeah.
But even beyond this physical, I don't know if it has happened to you because you are a public figure.
Mm-hmm.
Do you worry about your physical safety at all?
I mean, that comes with the territory. I've had that for years. That's.
No, I know, but especially at a time like this,
honestly, no. The answer is no, and I'll tell you why. Because I first of all, I've always gravitated towards going to where the fire is. That's kind of a journalistic instinct. But second of all, I can't help but think, and I know you're not suggesting this, but that we're in the line of fire like those others are. But I can't help but think of all the people who are much more closer to the action in all kinds of ways, who are dealing with the folks in Evin prison right now for doing nothing other than making a film or writing the wrong song or saying something at a protest, right? So I don't feel like I have the luxury to be worried about my own safety, but I completely respect anybody who does, and I hear you in terms of you getting up there and playing a gig, especially in another country or something. These are weird days.
Yeah, I think about it only because I have a child, who's with me, and I think when you're responsible for another life, it becomes a completely different issue. Because
Sure.
I've always been an activist, I've always been outspoken, but ever since I became a mother, it's something that I've had to consider more seriously. For example, it's just little things that I don't do now. I would not do now that I normally do, which is come out after concerts to sign CDs and take pictures with fans. It's just about, you have to protect the people you're responsible for.
Wow.
So it's those, but I think the reason I'm bringing that up is not so much because to portray ourselves as victims or anything. It's just to say that's how dystopian it is. That it's something. Here we are living in a free society.
Oh yeah.
Here we are just expressing ourselves.
No, I mean,
but it's still something that it's in the back of your head of okay, I have to be cautious.
Yeah. First of all, the threat is not imaginary. It's happened all over the diaspora that people have been attacked or detained or suddenly they disappear or whatever. That has happened. But it also is a part of a collective trauma. I mean, how many people have you met that who've come from Iran that say, even Shaya was saying a few weeks ago that I don't know what it was. We were at it was some event where there was just loud sounds. I think it was a positive event. I can't remember what it was. And Shai said he was freaking out because it sounded like gunshots to him. So he equated it with being in Iran and explosions and the war and things that he's experienced in his life. So there's fear based on legitimate concern, and there's fear that's already inside us as a product of coming from this place that's basically been terrorized for 43 years.
Yes. But I really, if there's one very important message that, I'm trying to sort of propagate everywhere, on my own social media platform or anyone I have a conversation with, is that we are, there is so much stress at the same time involved with what we do. People underestimate actually how stressful it can be. And that's why it's so important to support artists during this time, artists who are using their voices and their platforms to, instead of promoting themselves, to really shine a light on what's happening in Iran. And this, I think it is happening a little bit more than it was, even just a couple of weeks ago, but there's still a part of the mentality is to, asking artists to be quiet, not perform, not do this, not do that. And this need to silence artists at a time like this is so counterproductive. Yeah. Because we are the voices now. We have this. You have this opportunity with your show. I have the opportunity every time I get on a stage in front of an audience that's primarily non-Iranian.
Azam, I always treasure our conversations. I really appreciate your wisdom, your perspective, your passion, and I thank you so much for this today.
Thank you. It's always such a pleasure to engage with your brilliant mind. And, I'm really sorry it was under these circumstances because ever since you changed format and went to video, we've been talking about doing a proper video interview, not even an interview, it's really a conversation between friends. And just promised me that if we triumph, we're going to do another one where we get to celebrate together.
Amen. What if we were to do it in Tehran?
Why not?
Have that conversation.
I think, I keep getting all these messages now on all my posts. All the fans from Iran say, hopefully soon we'll see you on stage in Iran. And I keep thinking, I've never been able to visualize that happening until now. For the first time in my life, I actually can envision what it might feel like if I go on stage. And all I can tell you is I don't think I would be able to sing. I think I would just start crying.
I can't even go there in my mind.
I wouldn't be able to. No one could console me. And I think I would just cry on stage and then I would just come off the stage. I don't think I could do it. Honestly, it would be so emotional for me.
Here's hoping. Thanks for doing this. Thanks for the song. We'll play it. We want to go out on it, so we appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jian Junam. Thank you.
Bye bye.
Zan zendegi azadi be umid azadi.
Right on, sister. Bye bye.
The breath of the morning, I keep forgetting the smell of the warm summer air. I live in a town where you can't smell a thing. You watch your feet for cracks in the pavement. Up above, aliens hover, making home movies for the folks back home. Of all these weird creatures who lock up their spirits, draw holes in themselves, and live for the secret.
This is Roqe episode 210, The Uprising, 40 days and no going back. Well, we've talked about how it was an epic day in Iran yesterday, marking the 40th day since the killing of Mashad Amini. It happened, there were protests, there was action in all kinds of places across Iran, including the big city of Mashad. We're going to go to Mashad right now, and one of the people who's been on the front lines of protesting since the beginning of this 40 days ago, her name is Azadeh. She is a young woman who's a translator. It's one of the things she does in Mashad. Azadeh, are you there?
Yes, I can hear you.
Thank you. Thank you for doing this.
I'm not sure my English. Okay. I'm not sure my English ability can support this kind of action, but I try my best.
You sound great. Your English sounds good. And if you ever want to switch into Persian a little bit, that's okay. Okay.
Thank you so much. That was my best for you.
Yeah, also, yesterday was a big day, the 40th day anniversary of the killing of Mahsa Amini. I know there was, obviously we've been talking about it throughout this show, there were protests all over Iran, including Mashad. You took place in what was going on in Mashad. Describe for me what happened there.
I don't know how much you know about Mashhad. Mashhad is not a place, but usually things take place, Mashhadi people are not known for partaking in this kind of protest, but last night they have shown that they are really tired of this, of living this life, of living in such conflict, For example, last night I met a girl named Mahsa. She had a 3-year-old daughter, and she told me she left her cell phone at home. Before she left, she asked her husband to take care of her daughter in case she never comes back. And she came out just to fight for her daughter's future, because نمیتونم بگم چرا این کارو کرد. به خاطر اینکه خیلی واضحه که چرا این کارو کرد. ولی خب اومد جونشو گذاشت.
When you say this friend left her daughter and with her or told her husband, I don't know if I'm going to be able to come back. Do you feel the same way when you go out in the streets? Did you have the same kind of feeling?
Yes, of course, because I am 30 and I already feel like half of my life is over. This half of my life is over, and I feel like I should be taking bullets, not the kids in the street, because many of them are kids, and
Azadeh, have you been going on demonstrations before last night?
Yes, of course. I've been in all of them.
And
I never missed a date.
And was last night bigger than the other ones? You said it for Mashad, it was a big spectacle.
Yes, it gave me such a big hope, because I was getting disappointed, but it was the biggest thing ever. Even in Mashhad, we were over 200 people and we were blocking the street, and the guard came from 4 ways, from the street, which I don't know what is that, and from the main street, and they were coming with teasers. I don't know how, but I managed to run away. There was a car, and the cars were just beeping. The cars were just beeping, and I don't know. When I managed to run away, I was confronted 2 guys. One of them had a stick, and one of them had a teaser, and I just ran into the street between the cars, and one car just opened the door for me, and they saved my life,
Wow.
In only maybe 1 second, I was able to jump in the car, and they covered me with coat. They covered me with a coat, and the guard came and looked through the windows, and they didn't see anything. They saved my life.
Our connection isn't great, but I think I hear most of what you're saying. So you got into this car at the last minute and got away. Did you know the people driving the car?
No, I didn't know them. There was a mother and his son and his daughter, and the mother yelled, "Get in the car! Just get in the car!" and I don't know how, but I managed to get in.
Wow,
And
this
her
is.
daughter thought maybe that's what.
I mean,
Yes,
it's amazing. People are really trying to help each other in the midst of these protests and the crackdown by the.
Exactly.
Wow.
Everyone is tired.
Can I ask you? There were. I'm pretty sure there would probably be different demonstrations. Mashad's a very big city in different places. How did you find out about the one that you went to? With the internet crackdowns and all of that, how do you even know where you're going to go?
When you these last days, I mean, in the last month, I've been in the streets almost every night, and I could see in the eyes of people that I mean, almost every night that there wasn't any protest, and I could see in their eyes that this is the best place. People just gather around in some places. Okay, for example, at the first street we were in one street, and we cracked the hell out of that protest. But after that, we were led into some streets where there were more God than people. But in the last few nights, people were waking up, like they knew where they should gather around. And they did. Last night they did.
Azadeh, if you've been going out every night all this time to these protests, can I ask you, have you at any point did they arrest you? Have you been injured? Has anything happened to you, or have you've been able to escape every single night?
Yes, I've been able to escape, and that is because men in this country are very brave. Okay, they throw themselves in the most dangerous to save us. And the only time I've been injured was when they hit me. I don't know. میشه کاشمی چی میشه؟
میتونی فارسی اینجا رو بگی ولی میگفتی که were you saying that the men are brave, they're putting themselves in front of you and protecting you in those situations? Is that what you were saying?
Yes, exactly. And since we are just a child, they tell us that men get affected with your hair, with your look and everything. But I actually remember, Saber, when a man hugged me just to protect me from guards who were coming at us with sticks. Okay? And I don't know how he escaped that moment, but he saved my life. I have many of these experiences, but I think I'm very lucky.
So a lot of people were expecting that after a few weeks that this would die out, and especially because unfortunately we've seen the horrible when the regime cracks down in situations like Alban, these things eventually can't continue. But it seems like in Iran this revolution is continuing. Can you tell me about the energy that you're witnessing from other people on the demonstrations, or the people that you talk to, or the people that you meet in Mashad?
Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm gonna tell you something different to answer your question. Okay, all my life I have wished I was anything any person but an Iranian girl. Okay, I actually thought maybe I was Hitler in my past life because now I'm born in Iran in one of the worst cities, and I'm suffering such a weird life. Okay, so I decided to study few more languages, and I go somewhere and disappear, and I go somewhere and live somewhere that there are no Iranians, and I can't forget Farsi. Okay, but actually, in the last few weeks, there's something in me that says, okay, everything you've been through, that can pass on, and you can make a life for other girls born in Iran that is better than this. Okay? I don't know. And that is the energy I'm getting from other people around Iran.
Wow.
That is something I owe to them.
So you're 30 years old, and it sounds like the last 6 weeks have changed your life.
Yes, exactly.
They've changed your own relationship with being Iranian.
Yes, exactly. I've never been a nationalist. I have never had any. I have never had any love for Iran, but now I feel like I'm a part of these people because not just me, everyone is feeling frustrated.
That's kind of the most incredible thing I've ever heard anybody say. I mean, that's a big deal that this social movement, this political movement, this moment in time in Iran has fundamentally changed your path. I guess it's no secret then why you're not going to give up anytime soon.
Exactly. My family, please don't know where I'm going every night.
Your family don't know where you're going.
I come every night, some nights injured, some nights okay. I have almost every night nightmares. But I still go out every night. And I'm not getting tired of it.
And Azadeh, before I let you go, I have to thank you so much for doing this. But I should say, you are Azadeh in Mashad, and in this entire series we've been doing, in most cases, we've been using pseudonyms. We've been changing people's names. You wanted to use your own name, and I don't blame anybody for wanting to change their name when they do these interviews because it can be a little scary. You're not scared, huh?
No, I'm not. Because I think I have nothing to lose. And I love my real name.
It's a lovely name. What do you want, before I let you go, what do you want? There's people who are listening to you right now, your voice in Mashad, the day after big demonstrations, the ones you've been going on every night. What do you want people around the world who are listening to you right now to know? What do you want to tell them?
I actually don't know what to tell to people around the world, but I have something to tell to people, to Iranian people, to people in my country, that to know the only time you can know you are brave is the time when you're brave. And you can't know you're brave by watching movies, by watching, I don't know, Instagram or anything.
You want people to be brave and join you on the streets, it sounds like.
Exactly. That's all I want. I don't want my friends to leave me alone in the battlefield.
Azadeh, I can't believe you're out in the streets. I know it's in the wee hours of the morning there. I'm so grateful that you talked to us. Thank you for your courage, and thank you for the fight that you're leading in a place like Mashad. Merci, Wasim.
من از شما ممنونم آقای اشکر. و واقعا متاسفم که نتونستم بهتر از انگلیسی صحبت کنم. من خیلی سال انگلیسی صحبت کردم.
انگلیسی شما خیلی خوب بود و از فارسی من که خیلی بهتره. Thank you so much for this, Azadeh. Take care of yourself, okay? مواظب باش.
شما هم همینطور.
حتما. خداحافظ.
Paranoia is in bloom, appear. Transmissions will resume. I try to push, try to keep us all bound down and hope that we will never see the truth around. Another promise, another scene, another a package like to keep us trapped in greed. All the green belts wrapped around our minds, and endless red tape to keep the truth confined.
This is Roqe episode 210, The Uprising, 40 days and no going back. If you want to listen to any of the episodes or watch anything from our last 6 weeks of coverage of The Uprising, go to our website, roqemedia.com, roqemedia.com, where you can see all of our previous episodes, outtakes, videos, etc. It's all there. Let's continue from our voices inside Iran. We're going to go to Tehran right now. And a young woman who has also been on the front lines of demonstrations. She is a musical artist, and we're going to use the pseudonym for her, Lilac. Lilac, are you there in Tehran?
Yes, hi.
Hi, thank you so much for doing this. I understand that you're in Tehran. You were active in the big protests that we saw happening across Iran, but also in Tehran yesterday. Describe what last night was like for you.
I was in the street, hijabless, and I was holding my scarf above my head and walking down the street. And I ran into IR forces and they told me to go. But I ignored them. Suddenly a man through the protesters came and sprayed pepper spray on my face and made me to move. And it was terrifying. And this happened to me. And I think much more terrifying stories are with another people. And this was my story to tell.
I know there were big protests in different parts of Iran, let alone different parts of Tehran. Where you were, was it a big group of protesters that you were amongst, or were you by yourself?
I was by myself, but in the group of protesters I didn't know. And we were a lot.
It was a big group.
Yeah.
Can you describe, Lilac? We've seen footage of, I mean, there was seemingly 100,000 people or more in Masa Amini's hometown yesterday. There's protests everywhere. Can you describe what the energy was like on the street in Tehran last night in this protest? What was the feeling that you had, and what were people saying to each other?
I actually didn't talk to anyone because there are many people that I don't know if I can call them plainclothes. Is it's the right word?
It is correct. Yes.
Yeah. There are many plainclothes among the protesters, and I was afraid to talk to anyone, but I guess everyone has hope, and they want this regime. They want to end this regime, and I think it's good and common.
Have you been going on demonstrations for the last 6 weeks, or was this one of the first ones you've gone to?
No, it was the third one.
And how do you feel it has changed or how do you feel? Was it any different from anything before?
The group of people was bigger, and I think I myself was more brave, and I guess maybe the others are more brave too.
Well, it sounds like you're very brave because you're going by yourself to a protest with a group of people that you don't know. That would be intimidating to do here in Toronto for me, let alone for you in the middle of a crackdown from the regime. Tell me about the courage that you have, why you feel the ability to be able to do that.
I want Islamic Republic out of my life, and I actually am afraid of the future with Islamic Republic, and I think this feeling bugs me up to fight against them.
What do you mean you're afraid of the future? Like it could get even worse than it is now?
Yes, sure. I'm pretty sure that it would be horrible. Yeah.
Are your family in Tehran?
Yes. My family are in Tehran.
Do they know that you go to these demonstrations?
Yes, and they are afraid, and but I think I'm afraid too. I know what I'm doing, and I know there would be consequences, but I'm afraid of the future too, and I think going out and protesting is now the move I can make, and I rather to go and protest.
Lilac, we're seeing, we hear reports about the Basij and the Islamic regime forces and police being exhausted in some cases. There's some videos online of, in some of the cases, them getting chased away by a bigger group of protesters. Are you seeing any of that, or was the presence of the Basij as strong as it always has been?
Mm-hmm. I can see them. I think they are exhausted, and we know that they just have gone, nothing more than gone, and it's bad, and also it's not bad because if we take their gun, they have nothing. And I think this is not power. And I think we can win.
Are you you're in Tehran, and so I'm assuming you're connected. You know that yesterday was a big day all around Iran, right?
Yes, yeah.
And you must also be aware of those of us in the diaspora, those of us of Iranian background outside of Iran, that there's been massive demonstrations around the world, here in Toronto, the giant one in Berlin last week. How does that, I mean, I don't mean to say this is self-serving, but we don't want to pat on the back, but we want to know that we're helping somehow. Does that make a difference to you guys?
It did, yeah. I think that was good, but some part of it was, I think, some part of it was not as good as I thought that it would be. But overall, I guess that was good. It had a good picture for the world, I guess.
You're talking about Berlin now in particular?
Yes.
May I ask you what the parts that weren't as good as you had hoped were?
It's hard to say it in English.
Say this part in Persian if you want. You can say this part in Persian.
Okay. این که یکم انگار اون کسایی که سخنرانی میکردن سانسور میشدن، یعنی اون کسایی که دوست داشتن که سخنرانی هم کنن سانسور شدن و اصلا تا جایی که من میدونم اصلا جزو آدم ها مشروطه خواه ها یا امثال اونا آدم های غیر چپ حضور نداشت و به نظرم این هم خیلی جالب نیست که به عنوان یک اتحاد یک سری آدم ها رو بیاریم توی خیابون توی برلین و بعدش اون اتحاد انگار وجود نداشته باشه، چون من مطمئنم که آدم های خیلی زیادی اونجا بودن که بهشون اجازه داده نشد که صحبت کنن و این بخشش که قابل پیش بینی هم بود چون لیدر اون عقاید رو داشت، ولی به نظرم این یکم جالب نبود.
You feel like the speakers in Berlin, those who got to speak, were not as did not reflect the diversity of voices that you would prefer to hear.
Yeah.
And that they, in some ways, were not as open and as frank as you would like them to be.
Yes, sure.
What do you, if you were to, in a nutshell, we have a good connection with you here, so if you don't mind me I'm going to ask a couple of extra questions. I'm so happy to be talking to you. Do you know, you said earlier you don't want the Islamic Republic anymore, and that's, we know that part. We know, sometimes it seems like we can't find anybody who does want the Islamic Republic, and except for those who are directly tied to the regime. What is it that you, if you were to put it into words, what is it that you want?
Liberty. We don't want reform. We don't want to talk. Just liberty, and liberty is opposite of Islamic Republic, and we want liberty.
And what does, in your mind, Lilac, when you think about liberty, and you having liberty in Iran or in another place of the world, what does it look like to you? What do you think of?
For me, as a woman, the just the basic things. I I want to have the right to sing, the right to play my instrument, the right to wear the clothes I want, and and just basic things. I'm not thinking so much, and that's it, I guess. I don't know. Everything and nothing.
Well, it's really important to hear these things, because when we're sitting here in the West and we hear about, activism and protests, and we have to put it into context of just how crazy what's happening in Iran is. You are willing to put your life on the line by going to these demonstrations just for the right to be able to play the guitar and sing in public.
Yeah.
It's heartbreaking that that you are in a situation, in a place that where you are unable to do that. Do you I mean, how do you feel about Iran? Would you, if things can change there, will you want to stay in Iran, or does this feeling of hating the Islamic Republic make you want to leave the country forever?
I think I would stay in Iran, and after this regime ends, I think I can. I have options now. I don't have so many options now, but if Islamic Republicans, I think I have options and I can think about it. But now, and at this time, I think I'm gonna stay.
Do you think those of us who are outside of Iran, Iranians or otherwise, even non-Iranians, do you think we understand you, people, the young people inside Iran? And if we don't totally understand you, what should we understand? What do we need to know?
I think we, all of us, should know and read history and talk to people that tell us history in the right way, not the way that they want to. And I think, yes, you can understand and feel us, and that's good for me, for us.
Can I ask you a weird question? This is, these are peachy deck questions I'm asking you in some way. So I appreciate that you're playing ball and you're helping to answer them. But let me ask you this: you're a young woman. I mean, you were born and you grew up with this Islamic Republic. You're supposed to be one of the people that they brainwash or indoctrinate and, make believe that all of the things that they want you to believe about Islam or wearing the hijab or what gender roles or all of those things. How is it that you and so many, seemingly an entire generation, has basically defied being brainwashed by them and is giving them the middle finger? How is it that you've managed to do that, do you think?
Not easy. Not only the regime, but also some families and father, mother, and uncle, aunt. could
Pressure.
make me to do something that I don't want to. It was hard, and it is hard. It's not over. I keep reading and searching and talking to the people I find safe, and I find people that are aware. And it is a hard task to do, but I keep trying, and I guess I have some point of views now after 27 years.
But you know what's really cool about it is that if there's one thing that I lament about the West is that I feel like people grow up here and are not really brought up to be critical thinkers. They sort of follow things, and now it's just become people follow they're in a bubble of who they follow on Instagram or something like that. But you, out of necessity, and your cohort, a new generation in Iran, especially even those younger than you really are kind of forced to be an independent thinker, aren't you? You have to intellectually defy everything that you're being told, everything that you were taught, everything that is the societal norm. That's a lot to handle, besides going in the demonstrations and fighting against the bullets. I mean, you are incredible independent thinkers.
I guess so, and I think it's not a thing that we should be proud of. I think the children and teenagers should live in their own world and have their childhood and live their childhood, but unfortunately it's Middle East, and I guess we born fighters, and it's not good. It's not it's wrong, but it is what it is. And it is what it is.
Lilac, I thank you so much for the time you've given us. If you were to tell me how you're feeling about where the movement is right now, it's been 6 weeks. It hasn't died. If anything, it seems to be growing in some ways. Are you hopeful?
A hard question to answer, but I think this time we learned a lot of things. We want a lot of things, and we are conscious about many things. Not everything. And we should keep trying. And there are lots of ups and downs for me, and I know for the people around me. But I'm trying. I'll try to affect people around me and encourage them to make a move in their own scales. Not all of us can fight on the streets, but some can write, some can, I don't know, make music, and some can only announce that I'm against this regime. And I think I think these things are going to help, and I think the future is bright.
If and when this regime is gone, let's say we were to snap our fingers and there's a free Iran, what's the first thing that you would want to do in a free Iran?
I think I'm gonna cry. I don't know. I didn't think of it. I'm gonna dance and I'm gonna cry. I'm gonna hug every people I see in the street, and I'm gonna sing, and nothing special, but special for me and for Iranian people.
Sounds pretty special, actually. Lilac, thank you. Please take care of yourself. مواظب باش.
Thank you. مرسی، ممنون. امیدوارم که به درد خورده بوده باشه.
No, خیلی عالی بود. It was, and your English is excellent, and I'm thrilled that we got the phone connection we did. And again, I thank you so much for your time. I know it's the middle of the early morning there, so I really appreciate it.
خواهش میکنم. ممنونم از شما.
خداحافظ.
بای بای.
Thought that never changes remains a stupid lie. It's never been quite the same. No hearing or breathing, no movement, no color, just silence. The rise and fall of shame.
All right. Let's go to London, England now for my next featured guest, who has been very instrumental in demonstrations and actions for the movement in London. Roxana Mohammed Khani has a PhD in physical chemistry. She immigrated to the UK around 3 years ago. On the day of the death of Mashad, she stood in front of the Iranian embassy in London to raise awareness. She subsequently cut her hair at a demonstration in Trafalgar Square. That video of her doing that went viral. And she has started a grassroots campaign to raise awareness around businesses that don't support a free Iran. And right now, Roxana Mohammed Khani joins me from London. Hello.
Hi, Jian. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate it. I know how active you've been, and khasté nabashi, because I know you got home really late last night from a demonstration. Let me start, Roxana, with a very general question that I've been asking people since I haven't had the chance to speak to you since this new era, the post Mahsa Amini being murdered era. Tell me about, first of all, what the last 6 weeks have been like for you. Just describe that in any way you want.
Actually, I think we all have two emotions at the same time. It's hope and pain that we are going through. And, at the same time, we are learning each other and we are growing, because I think that we all new in these things. Although, I've been activist since I know myself. I've been fighting for very basic rights that as a woman we don't have in Iran. I spent the majority of my life in Iran, and I have too much pain, because I always see that how my peers and girls suffer from, the 3 levels of dictatorship that we face. It's not about government, that we have this dictatorship in family, society, and government. And we have to fight, and it takes too much energy of us. So we, at the same time, we need to be professional in in our career, but we need to fight. So how we can manage it? It's hard. So as a woman, we need to the men need to appreciate that, how hard it would be to fighting for the very basic rights that you as a man already have, and thinking about career and being professional and expert as maybe your talent or your innate ability that we all have, but it takes too much energy of us.
A couple of weeks ago, on social media, you posted, "We are everywhere. We are not afraid of you. We are not hidden from you anymore, and
Yeah.
we keep fighting until your end." Who are you speaking to?
Well, thank you so much to say that. This is my slogan. I always trying to awakening people, that this is not us, that we are not going to afraid of them. Because as you can see, we are all over the world. Why we are keeping silent? And why we are so conservative? Because we taught at the school to be conservative. Our family, the society just asked us to be silent, to not get arrested or not to be on the, on the TV or something like that, to report you. And what I'm trying to do here with I made a video clip, and I also go to the businesses to raise awareness that it's the time that we stand together, that we are not afraid of them anymore. So why we still cover us and don't want to stand?
But if the last 43, I mean, presumably when you're talking about them, you're talking about the regime in Iran in terms of being afraid of them. Is that who we're talking about?
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm talking about the Islamic regime.
If the last 43 years were characterized, understandably, by the population being captive under their rule through fear, through intimidation, through terrorism, what has changed, do you think? Why are we not afraid of you anymore, as you put it?
Yeah, actually, that I think that this time is different because it starts with the very brave young girl who shouting their rights, because this generation is completely different from our generation. They are not afraid of any power, even it could be family, or it could be government or school. That I live in Iran, and I got arrested several times, because of singing at the street, because of my my hijab, and because of a very simple action of drinking water, and they are trying to bound me. But what I'm saying that my body just shiver when I pass by the the morality police, and I really afraid of them, even though I always stand and fighting. But what I'm saying that this generation is so brave, and we are just surprised by their bravery. This because of that, it's completely different from the other time.
Yeah.
And yeah, because of this generation are so braver than us.
They're brave, and they've drawn a line. I mean, I'm not putting words in their mouth because we just spoke to a couple of them in Mashad and Tehran on this program who've said, I'm willing to die to be able to sing. I'm willing to die to be able to dress how I want. I'm willing to die to be able to play my guitar. They just said that to us.
Yeah.
It's pretty profound, That's a pretty for basic rights. They're willing to put themselves out there in a way that I agree. Previous generations, including me, we would live in terror of what the implications would be of shouting out this way. As somebody who's been an activist for many years, are you? I mean, there's so much to be horrified by. I don't want to say happy, but are you pleasantly surprised by the strength of these new generations?
Absolutely. We're all proud of them. We just standing back of them and support them. They are in the front line of this revolution, and I just shocked and surprised by the bravery, and it just made me wordless. I cannot express how brave they are. But actually, what we are seeing that the government is trying to oppress all people. We all know that the Islamic regime is a very brutal, and no one would be safe under this regime.
Mm-hmm.
So that it's well known for all people in Iran that we all know that we are not safe and we have nothing to lose this time. This is what I'm saying, that okay, if we have nothing to lose, why not?
Roxana, let me get to one of the reasons why we've really wanted to have you on the show, which is this initiative that you've taken recently, where you've suggested that we shouldn't shop, we being the global Iranian diaspora, and in fact, beyond Iranians, I would imagine, that we shouldn't shop or work with businesses that don't want to support a free Iran. Tell me about the idea that you got. First of all, there's an area that people who are familiar with London, or if they watched our documentary called Talking to Persians London, we even went there. There's an area of London called Finchley, North Finchley, where there's a great deal of Iranians, especially Iranians who've come within the last decade or two, have opened a bunch of restaurants and businesses there and sort of little shops. Tell me about the initiative, the idea that you got to go to those businesses and what you did there.
Yes, actually, there is a list in London that say that this restaurant and this shop is part of Islamic Republic, so boycott them. But I never trust this list. I just wondering how can I prove this list. And after that our team, because all organizer, we are in a team, and made a QR code. I don't know that you know that under this QR code there's a link to sign a petition, and send a letter to MPs. And I'm just wondering, maybe it's a good idea to ask them to support us by just sticking this QR code, because it's just not a poster or a photo of Massa. It could save life, and so
explain. So the idea was to take a flyer or a piece of paper that has that QR code on it, go to these businesses, and rather than to judge them, you go to the business and say, "Hey, will you put this somewhere in your business to support the people of Iran?" It seems like a very simple request at this time when there's so many people around the world who are part of this movement. So what did you find?
Yeah, I'm just trying to find this flyer for you, because I'm just head to the restaurant, and introduce myself and say, "Hi, I'm Roxana. I'm not under any party or communist or monarchy. I'm just a very young. We are part of a very younger, team who are trying to raise awareness." And actually, I've been never thought that it could have been like that. It just beyond my expectation. It happened suddenly. I never thought that it went viral. And because I came to London just 10 months ago, and I thought that why we are trying to raise awareness and we ask the UK government or UK people or British people to stand in solidarity with Iran. Why we don't ask the Iranian who has a big, businesses and like Farsi restaurant that has a chain of restaurant and supermarket. So why not ask them to support us?
Sure.
And because it's the very simple thing that we can ask them, because as an Iranian community, and we are trying to keep our movement trending. So if someone, because in London you can, and also in Toronto, you maybe have a very big community of Iranian. So by spreading the word and having this QR code like that, to want to support Iranians or something like that. But when someone passed by this restaurant and just pay attention to this, and then other restaurant see this, and just something happened in the mind. So what's going on?
Frankly, I would think it's a no-brainer. It's a simple thing for a business to do, and probably I would assume it's actually good for business. There's so many Iranians who are enthusiastic about this right now. Why wouldn't you display that somewhere in your shop or in your window? So what happened when you went and asked them to do this?
It's just not for Farsi restaurant. I also have experience with other restaurant. They just opened the door and asked me to out. And you cannot imagine the feedback and the reaction of them, because it's the Mujahideen used to do that. And immediately they think that I'm part of Mujahideen. But when I explained to them and asked to have chat with owner, they just refuse someone who I don't know that is part of Islamic Republic or supported by them. But they refuse and never want to talk or meet me. They just ask the staff to don't accept something like this, and we are not going to support not only Iranians but Ukrainians, Afghans. They just making excuse that we are not politicians. We are not ones to engage in politics.
That was the reason they gave you? We don't engage in politics?
Yes, they make an excuse that we don't want to engage in politics. For the Farsi restaurant, it was the only reason that they told me. And for other restaurant that I also made a story, told me that we have different kind of clients, customers here, like for example Islamic regime, and we don't want to bother them with this kind of a sticker that maybe I'm not sure. They told me that we have different kind of customers.
It does raise the question of who are the customers who would be offended by this QR code that's calling for freedom for Iran.
Yeah, honestly.
So you
just offended by a QR code.
you end up making a video outside of that Farsi restaurant, it's called Farsi, and a couple of other places, saying, "Hey, I tried to, ask them if they would take this, and they won't." And then your call is for people to not go to these places or to boycott them. Is that the idea?
No, I just told them that I'm spreading the word. I'm not here to, ruin any individual. I'm just trying to spreading the word about the businesses who are not going to support us. If they don't want to support us, we also don't support them. That it's your choice. Want to support them or not?
It's a very different question from, I know there's a hot debate going on about whether businesses in Iran, for example, should shut down in solidarity with the protesters at certain times, etc. But that's a different one because there's implications that have to do with the state, cracking down on you or taking umbrage at shutting down. There's really no reason to not put this flyer or this QR code somewhere in your restaurant. You're not even demanding that they put it on the front door or something, right? You're just saying maybe display this. There's really no reason to not do this except for not supporting it, right?
I just remember that someone asked me to sit and have a chat, and it takes more than half an hour. I just not go and back. I'm just trying to explain and ask the reason why not supporting us. I remember that one of them told me that my mother is sick and I don't want to have problem in going to Iran. And I told him that, do you know that how can you have fear of just a very simple paper? And you now see that in Iran at a street, the very young girl are so brave to stand in front of several security forces,
yes,
alone, just one people, and you are afraid of a very simple paper to one day that you are going to back Iran. And I say that we all need to sacrifice. That we need to sacrifice in somehow. For example, we all can back Iran all together. I also miss my family. I don't have any family here. But why we just thinking of ourselves?
So this video that you made of this action that you've taken with these businesses went viral. I mean, it's got thousands of likes and hundreds of thousands of views. Tell me about the kind of reaction you've been getting.
But people.
Yeah, from people, yeah.
I never expect that in the people that I'm just walking in London, they just come and hug me and say, you are so brave and you are so strong. I say, oh, thank you. I never expected that this kind of, and just hit me and come here, you are so brave. Do this with other restaurants. They are pro-regime, others are also pro-regime. And say, and the majority of messages and feedback physically in the street that I'm just walking and show me, hey, this is Roxana who made the video on restaurant, and just come closer and hug me. I'm so happy to see this, that because it shows that we are everywhere. That. We don't need to hide of this regime anymore.
Have you heard from any of the businesses since that video went viral? Have they apologized?
Oh, yes, several thousands. And today I also received a message. I have a coffee shop, and it's awakening.
You've heard from businesses that want to put the poster in the.
Yes, please come.
Well, what about the ones? What about the ones?
Thousand and
What about the ones that you outed? Have you heard from them? Have they apologized or said, "Okay, we'll take it," or anything like
yes,
that?
I heard from the owner that asked her to come and stick her papers on my glass.
And are you going to do that?
Uh, I because I haven't received direct
Uh,
message from him, but I definitely I'm more than happy because we are not against each other. We need to stand united, and this is what I'm trying to to do, to encourage people, to encourage more people and businesses to support us as an Iranian.
And I've somebody told me that you've heard from people around the world who want to take this idea and do it in their own cities.
Oh yes, it's so nice. I received from US to Canada also that we want this paper. How can I provide this paper? Because this letter is prepared just for UK, sorry, just for UK. But uh, I'm more than happy to send them. But from Vienna, Paris, and other city in Italy, in Germany, actually, I'm in touch with people, and I got their numbers. And now I made another page, another account in Instagram because it's expanding and it's hard to manage in one account. So I made a group for all people nationwide, not just not just UK, to encourage more Iranians to support us.
Roxana, you have a day job, right? You have a job that you work at during the day.
Actually, I'm freelancing.
You're freelancing because it's a lot of work.
But
What you're doing, it's very time consuming.
yeah, and
Um,
I'm doing the course, another course. I'm doing a second master, a data scientist master. It's a full-time master, and
wait a
I'm
minute.
writing my articles.
You have a PhD, but you're also getting another master's now.
Yeah,
The PhD wasn't enough.
I love learning.
I guess so. You're a Persian overachiever. But my point was that all of this must be taking a lot of your time, huh?
Oh yes, I'm just overwhelmed and burnout. But I think it's the time that the world is watching us. It's the time that we always waiting for it.
Hmm.
So you know we cannot lose this time. So I just have uh, I think 1 week late night. I uh, went to bed at 6 o'clock and wake up at 10. I just 4 hours or even less to check the messages, because after the video, uh, I would like to have, the feedback from people, so I don't want to miss the feedback.
Yeah.
And also the messages of threat, because I need to be alive. I don't want to,
You get threatening messages.
Yes, I received it and I reported to the police, and because of that, I need to check all messages.
Um.
And I received that. I don't know that I posted in my Instagram account to everybody know that if something happened to me, the responsibility of this killing, this death, is by this restaurant. Because they told me that I spread your photo and your page in all of my friends, and we are going to find you and do something to you that no one knows is from regime or anti-regime.
And are you scared?
I'm never afraid of them. Actually, I just laugh at them. they are so weak. I think they cannot stop and shut our voice down this time.
Did you
we
say
are stronger than that?
Did you say you came from Iran just in the last year, 10 months ago?
No, it's London.
London.
3 years ago, I left Iran.
That's what I thought. Yeah. So London, but even 3 years ago, that's relatively recent. Is part of you, given that you are so passionate about what's happening, does part of you wish you were in Iran?
Yes. As far as I know myself, if you also ask my friends, I know myself as a warrior. I feel in my heart that I have a mission to do something for women's rights, because I always protesting against rights since childhood. It's something in my heart. It's not for just this revolution. This is something that I've been doing for more than 34 years. I'm 34 years old now.
I figured that out.
More than, since I think that since 6 years old, I started fighting and protesting.
Wow. I thank you so much for the time you've taken. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you before we go. I know that there's one of the things that's being planned for this coming weekend, that would be Saturday, October 29th, is for a call for different cities around the world to do a human chain. I know we're doing one. Yes. There's going to be one here in Toronto, and that is happening in different places. You're working on that for London. Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, I also fill out the form, and some of the people from the PS 752 have chosen me as an organizer, and because I don't know, maybe they trusted me as an independent people who is not under any party, because they focus on independent people.
Good for you.
And I'm so honored and humbled to organize this human chain on Saturday.
And where is that going to be in London?
We are planning, but I think that it would probable at Trafalgar Square.
I see.
Yeah.
Thank you. I know this is for people who listen to our program. This might seem like a question that I repeat all too often, but it's important for me to ask everybody who comes on these days. So let me ask you before I let you go. Are you hopeful?
Too much. I cannot say how much hope I have in my heart deep down. And actually, we need to have hope, but this time, since when I heard the word of your name would be a mystery, this just moving in my heart, that because it isn't, I don't know how can I say, but definitely this time might be different, and I have too much hope that we will win.
Roxana, I know it's you've been working all hours, and you were at Trafalgar Square late last night. Thank you so much for taking the time. It's great to finally have you on the show, and I hope we'll do it more regularly. Merci.
Thank you, Jian.
Talk
nice
to you
to
soon.
See you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
That's Roxana Mohammed Khani in London. Thank you to her and to all of our guests for today's show. This is full time for Roqe episode 210, The Uprising, 40 days and no going back. For all information about these episodes, to listen to or watch any of our previous episodes, you can go to our website, roqemedia.com. roqemedia.com. You can also link to other programs that we have on Roqe Media, our previous episodes, our guests, videos. It's all there. And if you care to support us and what we do, you can also press the support us button at roqmedia.com. We really appreciate that. We crowdsource, and that's how we stay alive. Thank you to all of you out there for supporting us and sharing our content. Please subscribe if you have not done so already. We are going to go out on that song, Baraye, the cover version featuring Azam Ali, Loga Torkian, Mohammad Khadem,
Hamid Nikpey, Arash Arvin,
and Masa Qasemi. Yeah. Do listen to it. Thank you to those guys for doing this. Find me on Instagram at Jian Ghomeshi. میزون باشین.
برای توی کوچه رقصیدن، برای ترسیدن به وقت بوسیدن، برای خواهرم، خواهرت، خواهرامو، برای تغییر مغزها که پوسیدن،
برای شرمندگی، برای بیپولی، برای حسرت یک زندگی معمولی،
برای کودک زباله‌گرد و آرزوهاش، برای این اقتصاد دستوری، برای این هوای آلوده، برای ولیعصر و درخت‌های فرسوده،
برای پیروز و احتمال انقراضش، برای سگ‌های بیگناه ممنوعه،
برای گریه‌های بی‌وقفه، برای تصویر تکرار این لحظه،
برای چهره‌ای که میخنده، برای دانش آموزا، برای آینده، برای
این بهشت اجباری، برای نخبه‌های زندانی، برای
کودکان افغانی،
برای این همه برای غیر تکراری، برای این همه شعارهای طوفانی، برای آوار خونه‌های پوشانی، برای احساس آرامش، برای خورشید پس از شبای طولانی،
برای روزهای اعصاب و بیخوابی، برای مرد میهن آبادی، برای دختری که آرزو داشت پسر بود، برای زن زندگی آزادی،
برای آزادی.